For as long as the Galactic Council existed, humanity was considered a rising power. They were warriors, diplomats, explorers everywhere in the galaxy. But now, they were gone. No one knew why. No one knew how. And the strangest part, no one had dared to ask. Until now. The mission begins. Captain Vorel of the Cellari Republic sat in the command chair of his exploration vessel, Starblade. Before him, the empty void of space stretched endlessly. But in the center of that void should have been Earth. His reptilian claws tightened on the armrest. "You're sure about this?" The crew member at the console, a feline-like Corin named Sela, hesitated. "The star charts are correct, Captain," she said. "Earth should be here, but—" She trailed off. Vorel leaned forward. "But what?" Sela's voice dropped to a whisper. "There's nothing here. No debris. No ruins. Not even an asteroid belt. Just a void. An impossible, unnatural void where a planet should be. The lost homeworld." The Starblade scanners swept the area, searching for anything. "There should be something left," Sela muttered. "No civilization just disappears." Vorel agreed. Even if humans had been wiped out, their planet should remain. Even dead worlds leave behind traces. But this place, it was as if Earth had never existed at all. "Sir," another crew member spoke up, his voice shaking. "I'm picking up something strange. There's a signal." Vorel frowned. "From where?" The officer hesitated. "That's the thing, sir. It's not coming from anywhere. It's just here." The bridge fell silent. Then the signal changed. It was no longer random static. It was a voice. A human voice. "Leave." The warning. The crew froze. Sela's fur stood on end. That can't be possible. There's no source." The signal repeated. "Leave." Then, for a brief second, another sound cut through. A whisper, not in human language. But every species understood it. A feeling of dread settled over the crew. Something was watching them. Vorel's instincts screamed at him to run. But he had come too far for that. "Enhance the signal," he ordered. "I want to know what's behind this." The crew hesitated, but they obeyed. And that's when the real terror began. The hidden truth. The screen flickered. A blurry image appeared. It was a city, one of Earth's great cities, but something was wrong. The buildings were standing, not ruins, not destroyed. They were perfectly intact. But they were empty. No people, no movement, not even a shadow. Like the entire planet had been frozen in time. Then the screen glitched. For a brief second, something moved in the reflection of a glass building. Not a human. Not an alien. Something else. And then the voice returned, louder this time. "You who should not be here." The Starblade's alarms exploded. Warning sirens blared. Systems shut down one by one. Engines, weapons, lights. The ship was dying. "Captain," Sela shouted. "Something is overriding our systems." Vorel made a decision. Returiate. Now. The crew scrambled, forcing the ship into emergency jump mode. The ship lurched, space twisted. And then they were gone. The escape, or so they thought. The Starblade reappeared light years away, deep in neutral space. The crew gasped, catching their breath. The ship's systems slowly rebooted. Vorel wiped sweat from his brow. "Damage report. All systems operational," Sela said, her voice shaky. "But Captain." He turned to her. She pointed at the console screen. A single message was displayed. Words written in an ancient human language, translated instantly by their computers. It was the last thing they ever expected. A message from someone, or something, that had been waiting for them. The message read, "You have seen too much. The throne was left empty for a reason. Do not return, or we will remind you why the universe fears us. The crew of the Starblade had barely escaped the void where Earth once was, but they had not escaped the truth. Something had seen them. Something had warned them. And Captain Vorel couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was not done with them yet. The Council's denial. The moment the Starblade returned to auxiliary space, Vorel demanded an audience with the Galactic Council. He reported everything. Earth's disappearance, the mysterious warning, the ghost city frozen in time. He expected shock, fear, action. Instead, the Council laughed. "This is nonsense," one of the elders scoffed. "Planets do not just vanish." Another, a thick-shelled Drovan, grunted. "Your scanners must be malfunctioning." Vorel's patience snapped. "Look at the data," he growled. "Earth is gone. No debris. No ruins. Nothing. And yet, we received a message. The Council leader, an ancient being with deep golden eyes, sighed. "A prank, Captain. A human trick left behind long ago. Let it go. Let it go." Vorel clenched his fists. Did they not understand? This was not normal. This was not natural. This was something far worse. And he would prove it. Tracking the signal. Back on the Starblade, Vorel met with his crew. They had all seen the warning. They had all felt the fear. But fear was not enough to stop them. "We can't let this go," Sela said. "If the Council won't act, we must." Vorel nodded. "We follow the signal. We find the truth." Using the strange transmission they received near Earth's void, Sela traced it to an abandoned station on the edge of the galaxy. A human station. It had been sealed off for centuries. No ships. No activity. Just floating in the dark, waiting for something. Or someone. And now, they would answer its call. Entering the ghost station. The station was called Echo 7, a relic from the time when humanity still ruled the stars. The docking bay was eerily intact. No damage, no decay. As if someone had cleaned it yesterday. "This place should be falling apart," Sela whispered. "But it's untouched." "Stay alert," Vorel ordered. "We don't know what we're walking into." They moved cautiously through the silent corridors, weapons ready. There were no bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty halls, blinking lights, and a door that was already open. Beyond it, a single console was active, waiting. The last message. Vorel stepped forward. The screen flickered as he approached. A video file appeared. A human face stared back. A man, old, weary, his uniform bearing the symbol of Earth's last government. His eyes were hollow. And then, he spoke. "If you are seeing this, then you have ignored the warnings." The crew tensed. "We told you not to come back. We told you to let Earth remain forgotten. But you could not resist. None of you ever can." A shadow passed behind him. The lights flickered. "You do not understand what we have become." The crew shivered. The air felt colder. The man's expression darkened. "You are being watched. And soon, you will learn why the universe let us go." The screen shut off. And then the alarms began screaming. The station awakens. The walls shook. Doors slammed shut. The station's power roared to life. Something had activated. "Captain." Sela gasped. "Something's coming." The console lit up again. This time, it was not the man's face. It was something else. A silhouette. Tall. Wrong. Unnatural. And then, it spoke. "You were warned." The screen exploded in static. And the crew felt it. A presence. Right behind them. The Starblade's crew froze. Something was behind them. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy they couldn't explain. Vorel's instincts screamed at him to move, to run, but he forced himself to turn. Slowly, carefully. And then he saw it. Or rather, he saw nothing at all. Just shadows where no shadows should be. And yet, he knew, something was watching. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. The escape begins. Back to the ship, Voral roared. The crew bolted down the dim corridors of Echo 7, their boots echoing in the silence. The station hummed, as if it had awakened after centuries of sleep. Lights flickered, walls groaned. And then, the doors began to close. One by one, metal barriers slammed shut, cutting off their escape routes. Voral skidded to a stop. Find another way. Scylla's fur bristled. We're running out of time. Another crew member, a young navigator, looked at his scanner. There's an auxiliary passage to the hangar. Voral didn't hesitate. Move. Now. They sprinted through the winding halls. But the shadows followed, not chasing, just watching, waiting. And the deeper they went, the stronger the feeling became. This was not an abandoned station. It was a trap. The haunting message. As they ran, the ship's comms crackled to life. A voice, distorted, broken, yet unmistakably human. You should not have come here. The crew flinched. It wasn't coming from their ship. It was coming from every speaker in the station. A low whisper followed. Not one voice. Many. Turn back. Turn back. Turn back. Voral growled. Ignore it. Keep going. But then, the whisper changed. It spoke his name. Captain Voral, you cannot run from us. His blood froze. How did it know his name? The hallway of shadows. They reached the auxiliary passage, but it was not empty. Figures stood in the hallway. Tall, unmoving, silent. At first, they seemed like statues. Then one twitched. Scylla gasped. Are they human? Voral wasn't sure. The shapes looked human, but wrong. Their limbs were too long. Their heads tilted unnaturally. And their eyes were missing. Yet, somehow, he knew they were looking at him. The lights flickered, and the figures moved closer. The desperate gamble. Voral raised his weapon. Fire. The crew opened fire, energy blasts ripping through the figures, but they didn't react. The shots hit nothing, as if they were shooting at ghosts. And then, the figures took a step forward. Voral's heart pounded. We have to go through them. The navigator paled. But Captain, no choice. With a roar, Voral charged, rushing straight through the phantom figures. For a split second, he felt cold. A void of nothingness, a glimpse of something vast and ancient. Then, he was through. His crew followed, gasping as they stumbled into the hangar. The Starblade was waiting. But something was already there. Standing at the base of the ramp. A human. Or at least, what used to be one. The last warning. It looked like a man. But his skin was pale, his eyes hollow. His uniform was old, centuries old. And when he spoke, his voice echoed with many voices. We warned you. The ship's alarms blared. The hangar doors started to close. Voral had one chance. Go, he shouted. The crew rushed up the ramp. The Starblade's engines roared to life. The figure watched, silent, still. But as the ship lifted off, Voral swore he saw it smile. Not in anger, but in amusement, as if it knew something they didn't. And as the Starblade escaped into the void, the last transmission from Echo 7 played through their speakers. A final, chilling message. You have seen too much. Now, the real game begins. The Starblade was free, but Voral felt no relief, because deep in his bones, he knew they had not escaped. Something had followed them. Something they could not see. And it was already inside the ship. The crew's fear. The Starblade sped away from Echo 7, its engines pushing to maximum speed. But the crew was silent, shaken. Every one of them had felt it, the cold presence in that station. And now, the ship felt different. The halls were darker than before. The air was heavier, and the security cameras flickered, as if something was moving through the ship unseen. Sela checked her scanner. "There's something wrong with our systems," she said. "We're picking up extra life signs." Voral's grip tightened. "How many?" Sela's face paled. "One. But it's moving through the ship at impossible speed." Voral's heart pounded. They were not alone. The whisper in the dark. Voral grabbed his weapon. "Lock down the ship," he ordered. "Find whatever is in here." The crew spread out cautiously, moving through the halls in pairs. Every step felt wrong, like the walls were watching. And then, the lights flickered, and a whisper echoed through the ship. Soft, distant, human, but not from the crew. "You should not have left." The whisper came from nowhere, and everywhere. A crew member screamed. They turned, and saw nothing, just an empty hallway. But the whisper laughed. "You cannot run from us." Voral's blood turned to ice. Whatever had been on Echo 7, it was here, and it was playing with them. The vanishing crew. Minutes later, the first crew member vanished. One moment, he was checking a console. The next, he was gone. No scream, no sound, just missing. Then another, and another. The crew panicked. "This ship is not safe." Sela gasped. "We have to find whatever this thing is before we all disappear." Voral growled. "No, we don't find it. We trap it." The captain's trap. Using heat scanners, they tracked the intruder. It wasn't hiding. It was walking freely through the ship. Not rushing. Not hunting. Just exploring. Like it belonged there. Voral led the remaining crew to the cargo bay, the largest, most isolated room on the ship. "Seal all doors," he ordered. They lured the unseen entity there, cutting off all other exits. The room fell silent. And then, the whisper returned. This time, right behind them. "You think this will hold me?" The shadows shifted. The lights died. And for the first time, they saw it. The thing that wore a human face. A figure stood in the darkness. A man, or at least, something pretending to be one. Its skin was pale, its eyes hollow, but its smile was too wide, like it was mocking them. "Captain Voral," it said. Voral aimed his weapon. "Who are you?" The thing chuckled. "You already know." It took a step forward. "We were human, once." Another step. "But we saw the truth." Its grin widened. "And soon, so will you." The ship shook. The walls groaned. And then, the thing lunged. The thing lunged. Voral fired. The blast ripped through its chest. But it didn't stop. Didn't flinch. Didn't bleed. The creature laughed. A horrible, inhuman sound. "You still think your weapons matter," it whispered. And then, the ship screamed. The ship is alive. The starblade shook violently. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and the metal walls groaned, as if the ship itself was in pain. Sela clutched the console. "What's happening?" The thing grinned. "You took something from Echo 7, it said. Now Echo 7 has taken your ship." Voral's eyes widened. The station, it wasn't just a place. It was a trap. And now, that trap had infected the starblade. The ship was no longer theirs. It belonged to something else. The vanishing floor. "Get to engineering," Voral shouted. The crew ran, but the hallway changed around them. Doors disappeared. Walls shifted. And then, the floor vanished beneath two crew members. They fell. No scream. No sound. Just gone. Like they had been erased. Voral froze. The ship wasn't just trapping them. It was consuming them. And then, the whisper came again. "Do you see now, Captain? There is no escape." The memory that wasn't his. The lights flashed. For a brief second, Vorel wasn't on the Starblade anymore. He was somewhere else. An old human ship. The walls rusted, the air thick with death. Figures stood around him. Humans. Or what was left of them. Their eyes were black voids, their voices a chorus of whispers. A single phrase echoed through the darkness. We were the first. Then, Vorel snapped back. He was on the Starblade again. But now, he understood. The first humans to vanish. Long ago, the first human deep space explorers had disappeared. Their ships, their stations, gone without a trace. The galaxy assumed they had been lost. But they weren't. They had found something. Or rather, something had found them. And it had changed them. Now they lived within the metal of abandoned ships and dead stations. And they wanted more. The final warning. The whisper returned. You are close to the truth, Captain. But knowing is not enough. The ship shook violently. Sela yelled, the engines are failing. We're losing control. Vorel's mind raced. They had one chance. They had to purge the infection. Or they would all become part of it. And as the ship's systems began to collapse, the whisper spoke one last time. Choose quickly. Or let the Starblade become your grave. The Starblade was dying. The walls twisted. The floors vanished. And the whispering never stopped. Vorel knew, if they didn't act now, they would never leave this ship alive. But there was one problem. They had nowhere to run. Because the ship was no longer theirs. It belonged to them. And it was hungry. The living prison. Sela screamed as a console melted into black sludge. The ship was changing, turning into something else. Vorel grabbed her arm, pulling her away just in time. Engineering. Now, he ordered. The few surviving crew members ran. But the hallways were longer than before. The ship was stretching. Like it wanted them to run forever. Like it wanted them to give up. And the whispering voice mocked them. Why fight, Captain? Why struggle? You could be part of something greater. Vorel ignored it. They had one last chance. The suicide plan. They reached engineering. The engines were dead. The AI was silent. Only one thing was still active. The self-destruct. Vorel looked at his crew. If we can't save the ship, we destroy it. The whisper laughed. You think that will stop us? Sela hesitated. Captain, if we blow up the ship, we die too. Vorel clenched his jaw. Not if we get to the escape pods. One problem. The escape pods were in the lower decks. And the lower decks were already lost. The last stand. They had minutes. Vorel activated self-destruct. A countdown began. 10 minutes. They ran for the escape pods. The ship fought back. Halls collapsed. Doors disappeared. Crew members vanished. One by one, the Starblade claimed them. Until only Vorel and Sela remained. They reached the pod bay. Only one pod left. Vorel shoved Sela inside. You go, he ordered. Sela's eyes widened. No, we both go. But Vorel knew the truth. If both of them tried to board, the ship would stop them. Only one had a chance. The captain's sacrifice. The whispers grew louder. The ship was closing in. The escape pod sealed shut. Sela pounded on the glass. Captain. No. Vorel smiled sadly. Tell them what happened here. He pressed the launch button. The pod blasted away. Sela's scream faded into the void. And Vorel turned to face the whispers. You won't take her. The darkness closed in. And the last thing he heard was laughter. Sela's escape pod drifted through space. The Starblade was gone, swallowed by the darkness, and Vorel was lost with it. But the whispers, they were not gone. They were still with her, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The aftermath. Sela's pod was rescued days later by a Terran patrol ship. She was the only survivor. When they found her, She was shaking, eyes wide, haunted. "Where is your ship?" they asked. She couldn't answer, because she wasn't sure if the Starblade was truly gone, or if it was just waiting. The warning that no one believed. The Terran Council demanded answers. Sela told them everything. The derelict station, the whispers, the thing that wore a human face, the way the ship itself turned against them, and Voral's final sacrifice. But they didn't believe her. "The Starblade suffered a catastrophic failure," they said. "You're traumatized," they said. But deep down, Sela knew the truth. She had escaped, but the infection had not died. It was still out there, and one day it would return. The first sign of doom. Weeks passed. Sela tried to move on, tried to forget, until the day she received a message. An encrypted signal, a distress call, coming from deep space. From a ship that no longer existed, a single line of text appeared on her screen. "Captain Voral, reporting in." Sela's blood turned to ice, because that was impossible. Voral was dead. The Starblade was destroyed. And yet, his voice whispered through the speakers. Soft, familiar, wrong. "Sela, you left me behind. Come back." And then the final message appeared. "We are not done yet."